Lamar Jackson is fed up with the NFL, and I can't say I blame him. We talk about what he is fed up with, as well as Derrick Henry calling out Lamar and Ravens week 2 of OTAs, kicking off all that and more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available for you on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For a 5-day week Ravens show here on Locked On Ravens. So Monday through Friday, we have you covered with daily Ravens content. Plus, we sometimes have some bonus episodes on the weekend when the headlines permit. We also go live after every Ravens game, after every single piece of Ravens big news as well. And thank you to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners, and if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Ravens week 2 of OTAs, it kicked off yesterday. We'll talk a lot about what happened there, but we're going to get into Lamar Jackson being a little fed up, and maybe a little more than just a little fed up with the NFL, about his opponents as well as how he is officiated. He took to social media and voiced some of his displeasure. And again, I really don't blame him for feeling the way that he does here. So we'll talk about that in the first part of the show. And then Derrick Henry went on the Dan Patrick show and said a little something about Lamar and him. Maybe those two, if they ever race, there was a little something Derrick Henry called Lamar out on. So we'll talk about that as well in the second part of the show. So Lamar Jackson took to social media and again voiced his displeasure. And I don't blame him for doing so. So Lamar Jackson, there was a video that an account put out, and the account says here, Lamar Jackson has the worst whistle for a superstar quarterback in the NFL. And it's a compilation of him getting hit late, dirty hits, et cetera, without flags, without penalties from the opponents' defenses. And Lamar Jackson said, "Them boys trying to be MMA fighters towards me." He ended up quote tweeting the tweet. And then someone else put in another clip of Lamar getting hit in the helmet. It was a helmet-to-helmet hit. Lamar clearly, this is textbook flag, textbook unnecessary roughness. And an account put a video of it and said they also forgot this. And Lamar Jackson just said, damn. Like, it's crazy that, you know, Lamar is not given the benefit of the doubt here. And it's true. I mean, we see this every single season for Lamar Jackson. And look, there are calls that don't go the Ravens' way, and there are calls that go the Ravens' way, right? I think last year there were a lot more, at least it felt like a lot more that didn't, but honestly, it probably feels that way for every team. But the Ravens, it was egregious. I think probably it was more so it was early in the season, week 1. There was the whole illegal formation controversy with the Chiefs, with Ronnie Stanley lining up too far back in the backfield when Jawan Taylor wasn't getting called for. So maybe that was it. But back to Lamar, you know, we see this a lot. And you kind of pull up plays side by side with some of the other star quarterbacks. And, you know, Lamar's not one to flop, if, you know, for lack of a better term. That's the word everybody uses, right? Flop. Lamar's not a flopper. Patrick Mahomes is a flopper. He is a shameless flopper. Josh Allen does it sometimes too. You know, these quarterbacks, and for Mahomes, it's gotten very egregious. I think Josh is more calculated with when he does it. And, you know, it works for Josh, and for Patrick, you know, he gets rewarded for those calls too. You know, Lamar doesn't try to sell the calls. He just is legitimately getting hit and getting hit illegally, and he's still not getting those calls. And so I did a little research, right? I do research over here on Locked On Ravens, and I took stats from NFLpenalties.com. They have a whole chart since 2009. I just did roughing the passer penalties. You know, going deeper into it, unnecessary roughness, et cetera, is something I might try to do and come back with that data. But right now we're only looking at roughing the passer by quarterback. So again, this is from 2009 to 2024. This also includes the playoffs. Lamar Jackson has had 15 roughing the passer penalties in 107 games. Now, if you want to break that up on a per game basis, that is 0.14 per game. He had 2 last season. Just for context of where that ranks among all quarterbacks, and I'm not going to count Taysom Hill personally in the quarterback conversation here. He is listed on here as the least amount of roughing the passer penalties on him, which, makes a little bit of sense considering he is a do-it-all player. But since 2009, there are a lot of qualifiers. I believe 73. Yep, 73. So we're taking out Taysom Hill, 72. Or, okay, we'll keep Taysom Hill in. 73 quarterbacks. We'll take the list at face value here, 73. So out of those 73 qualified quarterbacks, in terms of roughing the passer penalties per game over the course of their careers, Lamar Jackson ranks 46th on that list. Now, just for comparison's sake, in terms of some other quarterbacks, let's look at the big 4 here. Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes. Let's throw Josh Allen under the microscope because he obviously won the MVP last season, so might as well. Josh Allen, in terms of per game, is tied for 3rd. Lamar Jackson, 46th. Josh Allen tied for 3rd. And Josh Allen in 123 games has had 38 of those roughing the passer penalties. So that's 0.309. Lamar Jackson, 15 and 107. Josh Allen, 38 and 123. More than double in just under 20 games more that Josh Allen has as opposed to Lamar Jackson. Now, Lamar had 2 last season, as I mentioned. Josh Allen had 5 last season. Josh also had 11 in one season. The career high for Lamar roughing the passer penalties in a year is 6. So Josh Allen almost has as many roughing the passer penalties in one season as Lamar has had in his entire career. And again, in just under 20 less games, 16 games to be exact, if you want to do a little more quick math right there. So again, it's something where it's the penalties on Josh, the penalties on Patrick Mahomes, on these other star quarterbacks, they're going to get called, and they should get called when they are penalties. Now, they should not be rewarded for the flopping, and I think for Patrick Mahomes, it got very, very egregious last year, and everybody kind of fed up with that. But look, I don't blame Lamar for being upset about this or, the NFL not punishing his opponents for doing this is only giving them more of an incentive to do it because they look at it and they say, oh, hey, we're not going to get punished for it. We might as well just do it anyway. We're going to play Lamar a little differently than we play these other guys because, they'll call that when we hit Patrick or they'll call that when they hit Josh, but, they're not going to call it when we hit Lamar. Okay, cool. And then that gives them more incentive to be more dangerous with Lamar Jackson. I totally understand Lamar's frustration here. This is not the first time we have seen Lamar express frustration about this. I believe it was during the Cowboys game in week 3. Lamar was not happy about the penalties. And, he said something about, I forget the exact line that he said, but essentially he said that the Ravens were getting cheated. It might've been they're cheating us, bro, or something like that. So Lamar has not been happy with the officiating, with the way he's officiated, with his opponents doing this to him. And again, something that I definitely do not blame him for. And honestly, I give him a lot of credit for sticking up for himself here and, saying, hey, this is crazy. Guys are doing this to me and they're acting different around me as opposed to these other guys because, they enforce those penalties for the other star quarterbacks. And Lamar's a star quarterback. He doesn't embellish those calls like a Mahomes does, but Mahomes gets rewarded and Lamar doesn't. And, that to me is frustrating. It's frustrating for Lamar, frustrating for the Ravens. And again, Lamar calling it out. I give him credit for doing that. But coming up in the second part of the show, Derrick Henry called out Lamar on the Dan Patrick Show. We'll talk about what Derrick had to say and his confidence in himself, as well as other stuff with Derrick and Lamar. All that and more coming up on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances. major momentum shifts and can't miss moments. We are in the NBA Finals. We have made it. Thunder and Pacers game 1 kicks off tomorrow in Oklahoma City. Thunder are 9.5-point favorites over the Pacers in game 1. I like the Pacers here. I've been riding with the Pacers for the majority of the playoffs, especially over there in the East. And the Pacers have been really good on the road this year. And we saw how they handled the Knicks. Oklahoma City played the Timberwolves. They are also a very good defensive team, but I like what I saw from Tyrese Halliburton last game. I'll probably take his over. Pascal Siakam, Eastern Conference Finals MVP, his over, maybe Miles Turner as well for that same game parlay. So if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher here with you, talking on this Wednesday. Appreciate everybody for being here today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Derrick Henry went on with Dan Patrick on the Dan Patrick Show. It was actually a really good interview, and it really wasn't about like the Ravens and expectations for this season. It was more so about getting to know Derrick and, inside his welcome to the NFL moment, him back at Alabama and kind of going through being a backup to a backup and all that. But Dan Patrick also asked Derrick Henry about his 40 time. He asked, what would you run it now? And he said probably around the same time I ran it at the combine, which for context, Derrick Henry ran that 40 in 4.54 seconds. But he and Dan Patrick had a little mini conversation about how, Dan brought up that Derrick seems to run a little faster when people are chasing him. And Derrick agreed that he runs faster when there are people actually chasing him. And we know, Derrick broke off a lot of long runs and long touchdowns for Baltimore last season. And there are those pictures of, Bills defenders chasing him, Steelers defenders chasing him on those long touchdown runs. And the thing with Derrick is he's kind of grouped into an unfair category at times where, he is labeled as just a power back. He's a huge hulking guy. And because of that, people don't give him credit for his speed, but he is very underrated as a speed guy. It's not his calling card, but he is very, very good at, using that to his advantage. And so Dan Patrick then, after the conversation about that, asked, if he and Lamar were to run a race, what would happen? And Derrick Henry said, I like me. Derrick Henry likes himself in that race, which I think some people got like, whoa, hold on a second. This is Lamar Jackson we're talking about. And then Dan Patrick said, I think Lamar would take himself. Derrick Henry agreed with him. So, hey, I need to see it now. I need to see a Derrick Henry versus Lamar Jackson race. I know that I remember, Lamar's put up against a lot of different people in these hypothetical races. I mean, I remember people wanted him to race Tyreek Hill. There were a lot of other guys that Lamar, has had on, I guess, a docket of people that he needs to race. Now, I don't think he's going to race anybody, but I think the one person I think Lamar might admit to beating him in a race is Keaton Mitchell. And he might have already done that. He might have said that Keaton could do that. I'm not sure, though, so don't quote me on it. I might be remembering a different player, but I think that, realistically, I'm probably taking Lamar in that race over Derrick, and it's no disrespect to Derrick, obviously. Dan Patrick and Derrick were having fun about this whole thing, but hey, little call out to Lamar there that maybe during one of these practices when Lamar's there, maybe we'll see it. Maybe it'll get filmed. Maybe it'll get put out there. So I'm hoping for that personally, but we'll see. But yeah, the one guy on the team I would probably take over Lamar in terms of speed is Keaton Mitchell. Nate Wiggins, obviously very fast as well. You can maybe throw his name in that conversation. I think Zay could be sneaky there too. But, you have to remember for Lamar in terms of a 40 time, Lamar didn't actually run the 40 at the combine. I mean, his unofficial time at his Louisville Pro Day was 4.34. So, you kind of look at some of these others. Well, if you're just going off of numbers, Lamar ran at 0.2 seconds faster than Derrick. So we'll see. But, maybe Derrick will get that early burst. And then if he runs faster, we'll see. So these are all hypotheticals. But regardless, kind of what I wanted to bring this conversation back to is the fact that Lamar and Derrick together in year one was such a success. And, I think a lot of people saw that coming, especially here in Baltimore. If you listen to this show, you would heard me talk about how people were writing off Derrick Henry and the age thing was over exaggerated. And we saw on full display how that happened, how he was able to contribute in multiple different ways. And so in year 2 of that pairing, in year 3 of Todd Monken's Baltimore Ravens offense, I mean, I'm expecting the sky and more. The sky's the limit. Now we're going past that. Now, I mean, you're talking about the stars, shooting for the moon and the stars here for these two guys. Now, every season is different. Teams will try to come up with new ways to stop it, but it's hard for teams to focus on one of these guys, let alone both of them. Not to mention you have the threat of all these other pass catching weapons that can do damage. You got to worry about who actually has the football. And so, at the end of the day, defenses, it's a nightmare for those guys to have to figure out where the ball's going and the gravity that those two have together. And so I was just, I was so taken aback by the fact that we had to have so many conversations on the show about people discrediting both Lamar and Derrick for having each other on the team together. They were teammates and saying, well, that's not fair because they have each other and that's not fair. And again, my whole thought process there was, we're not berating Joe Burrow for having Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. We're not berating Josh Allen for having James Cook, but Mahomes having Kelsey, Xavier Worthy. Like we're not berating those guys. Like, why is it a conversation for those two? So at the end of the day, Lamar just gets unfair criticism. Derrick Henry was looped into that this season, and it was unfortunate because I think to me, it didn't take away anything, but I think for some people it did take away from the year that they had together, which, just enjoy football, man. You have two all-time greats playing with one another. I don't know how much longer it's going to happen. Like, how much longer does Derrick Henry have left? What does that look like? I want to enjoy every second of this because when you look at the gravity both those players have and how defenses have to move with them regardless of if they have the ball or not, just because of the pure threat of them, like the thing I want to see from Todd Monken this season is just not getting as cute as he has been. And that's been a problem for him over his first 2 seasons where sometimes we'll get too cute with the play calls, too cute with the personnel. And one of the examples of that is leaving Derrick Henry off the field in key situations. Just having Derrick on the field gives you so many avenues to do really whatever you want. And you taking one of your best offensive players out, they did it with 2-point conversions and, late fourth quarter executions and, 4th and 1s, 4th and 2s. It just made no sense. It made no sense. You want your best players out there at all times. We saw on multiple other occasions when they didn't get too cute, how well it worked. How even if you motion Derrick Henry out wide, which again, not what I would do. There was that one play where Henry was motioned out or he went out wide and Lamar ran the play to the other side of the field and Derrick was just kind of there. That's not what you want to do. You want to use those guys to your advantage consistently. Just run that over and over and over again. Just spam it. It's extremely hard to stop. So that to me is kind of where I am with the whole situation because these two are two amazing football players and they open up everything for everybody. And well, it's really just a joint effort. Like, it's not even those two. Like, obviously they have the most gravity, but, for example, Mark Andrews was drawing a bunch of attention early in the season for the Ravens last year. It's why he started off slow, or at least one of the reasons why he started off slow. And that allowed Isaiah Likely to go off in week 1 against Kansas City. It allowed guys like Zay Flowers and Rashod Bateman to get theirs. And then, defenses start to focus on those guys a little more, take that attention off of Andrews, and all of a sudden, boom, there goes Andrews with 11 touchdowns in 2024. So you have so many weapons. Don't get too cute with it. Just use them. Just use them. It's going to be, I think, a really good year for the offense. The offensive line obviously is going to be a big part of this as well. What's the guard position going to look like? But, at the end of the day, I'm very confident in what that group can put together. And coming up in the final part of the show, we'll talk about week 2 of the Ravens OTAs kicking off, what happened, as well as some news notes and quotes. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty to come here on Locked On Ravens. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher here with you, still diving into Ravens content. Ravens week 2 of OTAs kicked off yesterday, and they still have 2 more practices to go this week, both on Thursday and on Friday. But let's get into some of what happened on Tuesday during practice. As for the Ravens, it's exciting to, get into the swing of things, get back on the field, back with teammates, back with coaches. And we saw in week 1, the Ravens have a lot of guys there. Attendance was great. It certainly sent a message, but the attendance this is natural, not as strong in week 2, at least initially, right? This is just for Tuesday. So Jana Hahn of the Baltimore Banner, she put out a list of players that she did not see at practice, and Lamar Jackson was included on this list. So Lamar not there. Also, Rashod Bateman, Kyle Hamilton, Sanusi Kane, Chidobe Awuzie, Ardarius Washington, Jake Hummel, Emory Jones, Kyle Van Noy, Ben Cleveland, Ronnie Stanley, and Nnamdi Madubuike. So again, this is natural. I had kind of said on yesterday's show that wouldn't have been shocked if Lamar wasn't there. This, I believe, happened last year too, if I'm not mistaken, where Lamar showed up for some, didn't show up for others. And again, my thought process on it remains the same, where these are voluntary workouts. It is ideal to have everybody there, at least as many guys as you can get there for as many of the days as you can get them there for. But it's not like these guys aren't working. It's not like these guys aren't, doing what they can. And they're not just going out and, not doing any football training, football work at all. And the fact that, look, these guys were there in the first place last week is a really good sign in the first place. So I'm not overly upset about this. In fact, I'm not really upset about it at all, because my mindset is these are voluntary. Guys can show up, guys cannot show up. I'd love if everybody showed up, but it's just really never going to happen that way. And it's okay, right? It's okay. Now, if this was mandatory minicamp, we'd be having a different conversation, but we're not there yet, and I expect everybody to show up there. Now, Daniel Falele was back on the field. He was someone that was not there week 1, as John Harbaugh said, he was dealing with some physical things, but he was back at practice, which, really good sign for them. I think Falele being there, being involved as he fights for that right guard spot, going to be really, really important. But there were some things that happened during this practice of OTAs over on Tuesday, and I want to dive a little bit into what that was. Now, Sam Jane over at the Baltimore Sun said that the Ravens committed at least 6 false start penalties, and that was something Todd Monken was pretty disappointed in, which, obviously the Ravens led the league in penalties last year, so hopefully going to cut that down this year. Cooper Rush was the fill-in for Lamar, obviously. They signed him to a 2-year deal to be the backup. He completed 8 of 11 passes, according to Sam, during team drills, but he struggled in the red zone. But a standout, according to Sam, was Jalen Armour-Davis, who took first-team reps with Ardarius Washington out. He broke up a pass to DeAndre Hopkins in the red zone, and Sam said Hopkins was pretty impressive. He said he was a mentor for the younger wide receivers. Zay Flowers talked about that as well, saying that he's a real vet and that he's easy to learn from, which was really cool. Ryan Mink, also over at BaltimoreRavens.com, talked a bit about the kicker competition, both guys showing their stuff. Said that Andrew Voorhees ran with the starting offense of Ben Cleveland not present, and Odafe Owe looked absolutely jacked, like muscles. I think Ramey, shout out to Ramey, put a tweet out that said Odafe Owe looks like he ate Odafe Owe. That's how much muscle Odafe Owe put on. He said that he added about 20 pounds of muscle, which you can certainly tell he did. Ryan talked about Jalen Armour-Davis too. Talked about that the fact that he got those first team reps with Chidobe Awuzie out and Ardarius as well. Isaiah Likely, Ryan said, made 2 long receptions down the sideline. Malaki Starks closed really quickly when it looked like Rush had an easy touchdown to Patrick Ricard in red zone, and Starks ended up making Rush hesitate, according to Ryan here, and he ended up throwing an incompletion on the back of the end zone. So Malaki Starks already making an impact there as well, which is awesome. And, Malaki just continues to get rave reviews. Todd Monken talked about using Zay Flowers more this season, getting the ball in his hands more this year, which I think is look, you want to get your star players the ball. Zay Flowers certainly deserves the ball more, which I'm really excited about for him to be able to continue to showcase his stuff. I think the other thing that Monken was talking about, DeAndre Hopkins, he said that Hopkins has been really diligent in what the Ravens are doing offensively. He's come in, he's made an impact. And that, to me, Hopkins seemingly just continues to earn rave reviews from everybody. Monken reiterated that he is not concerned about Lamar. He said that, Lamar always comes in ready. He loves football. There is no concern from Todd Monken for Lamar not being there, which, is great. And then Zay talked about Lamar. He worked out with Lamar in Florida and talked about how it's just about getting the timing down. If they're running routes, Zay talked about how Lamar will say, "I'll run it this way," or I like how I ran it this way. And so it's detailing those little smaller things. And that's what I'm trying to get the message across here. At least that's my message, is that, these guys are working out together sometimes in different states. A couple of years ago, I remember the guys went down to Arizona or out to Arizona, and they worked out down there together, which was a really good experience for everybody. So, the work has been being put in all offseason, right? It's not just about, you show up to the field in May, in June, and that's when you start. The work is put in. If guys aren't there, it's unfortunate, but they're still putting in the work elsewhere. And Zay said that Lamar also wants to have more meetings with players and more team activities this year. Zay said, quote, he wants to do a lot more personal stuff with us just to get that team camaraderie on a good level. So Lamar just continues to show leadership, which is absolutely incredible. And, I'm excited for that. Zay also gave an update on his knee injury, which sidelined him from the playoffs. He said, quote, my knee is good. I feel 100%. I feel like I'm ready for this season. No limits. So, really positive. Zay's have had a lot of time to recover from that. The Ravens missed him dearly in those two. Well, maybe not so much the Pittsburgh game because the Ravens dominated Pittsburgh, but they certainly missed him in that Buffalo game. I feel like, maybe things play out differently if Zay was there. So we'll dive even deeper into OTAs tomorrow, talk about more takeaways from that. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. So be sure you hit the like and subscribe button in video form on the way out on YouTube. You can follow along and subscribe in audio form as well wherever you get your podcasts. It's the same show, both audio and video. And thank you so much for all of the support. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.